Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're decoding those powerful, sudden emotional reactions that can catch us all by surprise.
You know the feeling, right? A simple comment, a minor inconvenience happens, and bam, suddenly you're hit with this huge wave of anger or anxiety or sadness that just feels, well, way out of proportion. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. It's because there's something much, much deeper going on.
So, what we're talking about here are emotional triggers. And believe me, understanding them is the first and most crucial step to managing them. Okay, so what is an emotional trigger exactly? Well, think of it like this. It's any word, person, event, you name it, that basically flips a switch and sets off an immediate, and I mean intense, emotional reaction. It's a stimulus that makes your brain involuntarily recall something from your past, often something tough, and it causes this response that feels, well, totally overwhelming and out of your control. This example with Jamie and Casey is just perfect. See, logically, Jamie is just moving. It's not abandonment. But for Casey, it feels that way. And that's the whole point, isn't it? The trigger itself, the friend moving, isn't actually a threat, but it sets off this internal, personal alarm system that's wired directly into our past experiences. Brain hijack. I love that because it's exactly what it feels like. So, why do these reactions feel so automatic, so incredibly powerful? Well, the answer is literally in our brain's wiring. Think of it like you have two different brains. First, there's your emotional brain, your limbic system. This thing is lightning fast. It's your survival alarm, always scanning for threats. Then you've got your rational brain, the prefrontal cortex. This is the logic and reasoning part, but it's much slower. So when a trigger gets pulled, it's that super fast emotional brain that just takes over. It hits the fight, flight, or freeze button before your rational brain even has a chance to boot up and figure out what's really going on.
And this quote just nails it. It's why trying to reason with someone who's triggered, or even with yourself, is pretty much pointless in that moment. You're speaking the language of logic, or cerebral, to a brain that's only speaking the language of raw emotion, or limbic. The two are just not on the same frequency.
So, how can you actually tell when you've been triggered? Well, a lot of the time, your body is going to give you the first clues long before your mind even catches up. And what does it feel like? You might get that racing heart, find it hard to breathe. You feel totally out of control, like you just need to escape. Or maybe you get stuck in those negative thought loops, or you physically tense up, clenched jaw, tight fists. Maybe you even get flashbacks. These aren't just feelings. These are real physical symptoms of your body's survival mode kicking into overdrive, reacting to a threat from the past as if it's happening right here, right now. All right, so let's start mapping this out. And here's what's so fascinating. Triggers aren't just random, not at all. They often fall into these really predictable categories, and they're almost always tied to our most basic core human needs, feeling safe, feeling connected, feeling valued. So just take a look at some of these common categories: feeling ignored, feeling controlled, taken advantage of, or just feeling really vulnerable. Now, the specific thing that sets you off is going to be totally unique to you. It could be a certain smell, a tone of voice, even a date on the calendar. But the root cause, it almost always connects back to one of these fundamental emotional experiences. Okay, so this might all sound a little bit heavy, but here is the really great news. You absolutely do not have to be hijacked by your triggers forever. You can actually learn to shift from that blind, automatic reaction to a much more conscious response. So the old pattern is simple, right? A trigger happens, and then comes the automatic reaction. But the new path we're aiming for is different. A trigger happens, and then we create a conscious resource. The whole goal, the entire game, is to create this tiny but incredibly powerful pause between what happens to you and how you respond. That little gap, that's where you take your power back. Okay, theory is great, but let's see how this works in the real world. Let's talk about Joe. So Joe's in the middle of a big presentation, feeling pretty good, but then his boss points out one tiny flaw, and boom, he's triggered. Instantly, his heart is pounding, his face gets hot, and his mind is just screaming with frustration and self-blame, the classic spiral. So what can he do in that moment? Instead of just letting that spiral take over, he can use a really simple but powerful framework to get his rational brain back in the driver's seat. It's called the SBNRR method. Let's walk through it. First, S is for stop. Just for a split second, don't react. This is honestly the hardest and most important step. Next, B is for breathe. Take one single deep, intentional breath. This literally helps calm your nervous system. Then N is for notice. Check in with your body. Where are you feeling this? Jaw tight? Stomach in a knot? Then R for reflect. Try to get some context. Is this a familiar feeling? What might the other person's perspective be? And finally, the last R is for respond. Now you get to decide how to move forward in a way that's actually wise and effective for you. It's a total game changer. All right, so this brings us to what I think is the most important takeaway of all. We tend to think of triggers as these awful things we have to avoid. But what if they're not? What if, instead of being dead ends, they're actually signposts? I mean, listen to this. Triggers can point us to where we have personal work to do. They're not just random explosions, they're incredibly precise. They show us exactly where our past is bleeding into our present. They literally shine a spotlight on the parts of us that still need a little attention and healing. So the big question to leave you with is this. If your triggers really are signposts, what are yours pointing to? Because once you learn how to read them, you can start to transform these really difficult, challenging moments into your greatest opportunities for growth. So, hey, if any of this resonated with you, we would genuinely love to hear about it. Share your own experience with recognizing triggers down in the comments below. And of course, if you found this helpful, be sure to check out our other explainers on emotional intelligence and building resilience.